Greetings, my friends. This is Celeria Rosenkreuz, and on this episode of the Chronological Quran, episode 8, we shall be investigating Surah 68 once more, this time going from 17 to 28. The passage begins with the following. We have put them, the Meccans, to the test, even as we put to the test the owners of the orchard, when they vowed that they would gather the fruits of their orchard in the morning, leaving no thought for Allah's will, without saying, Insha'Allah. So there came upon it, the garden, an affliction from your Lord, while they were asleep, a calamity. So it was reduced to ashes, and it became as though reaped, black by the morning, like a pitch-dark night, in complete ruins. So, first of all, this comes across as Allah suggesting that the Meccans implicitly threaten his authority, not necessarily in the sense that they are an actual threat, but rather that their denial of it is an act of arrogance which needs to be punished, by saying that he is testing them in the way that he tested a group of fruit growers who did not say that they were constrained by Allah's will, which is to say, he is declaring almost explicitly that he is going to make an example of them by robbing them of their wealth and security. The text is establishing very early in Muhammad's ministry, considering he spends a lot of time in Mecca, and this is supposed to be one of the earliest of the Meccan surah. An intention in Islam not just to fundamentally shift the order of the city by attempting to bring the people thereof back to a respectful relationship with Allah, but also to punish the ruling class that was currently acting as a source and bulwark of corruption in the land. Given the metaphorical firestorm that is being referenced, I should imagine that it is a threat which is reflective of an intended violence. However, this violence, at least at this point, is being portrayed as divine in nature, not actually an indication that it would be the followers of Islam that would be carrying it out. Also worth noting that regardless of the supposed arrogance of the orchard workers, and that this is a sort of morality play type story that is promoting virtuous behavior in the form of diligence, it is very clearly attributing natural disasters to Allah's will, in such a way that makes him look like a petty tyrant who will crack a whip at anyone who takes a little step out of line. So, we continue on then to Ayat 21, where it says, Then by daybreak they called out to each other, saying, Go early to your harvest if you want to pick all the fruit. Run unto your field if you would pluck. Here we see a sort of dramatic irony playing out, and a farcical show being put on where the men act as if they were being diligent. The story is going out of its way to show that they were waiting too long, and willfully did so, choosing to delay and thinking that the fruit and timing would still be ripe when they thought things were most convenient for them. Thereby there is a sort of tension and build-up of either schadenfreude or extra pity on the part of the audience, which already knows what is happening, leading up to the discovery the men will assuredly make soon after. Then, with 23, it continues, So off they went, whispering to one another, saying, Do not let any poor person enter your garden today. No mishkeen should enter upon you into it. Here it is clearly the case that the story is trying to make you lose any sort of pity for the people involved, so that Allah punishing them seems just, and the straw men being portrayed here are made to look like terrible villains. It is worth noting that the practice of allowing the destitute into your fields to eat a certain amount of food for the sake of survival is a very ancient thing that is common throughout the Near East. It relates very much to the principle of sacred hospitality, where a person was obliged to take care of travelers and foreigners in the land, which itself was a very widespread practice that persisted for thousands of years in various pockets around the world, even into the Middle Ages. By setting the men up in the story as those who would trample upon such common principles and oppress the poor for their own sake, that their personal wealth and success might be assured, there would seem to be a concerted effort to remove any sort of concern that this act on Allah's part might be in any way unjust or overly extreme. At 25 it begins saying, And proceeded they early, totally fixated upon their purpose, believing that they had the power to gather the fruit, and to prevent the poor from taking anything therefrom. But when they saw it devastated, they cried, "We have lost our way. Indeed, we are lost. Lo, we are in error. In fact, we have been deprived of our livelihood. We are utterly ruined, desolate. Indeed, we have been deprived of the fruits." The most sensible, moderate, and best amongst them said then, "Did I not say to you, why do you not give glory to your Lord? Why did you not say, Insha'Allah?" The morality play thus concludes with the villains realizing the error of their ways, and in an ironic punishment which brought them down to the point of being equal to those they had rejected and intended to leave bereaved of food only minutes before. For indeed Allah did not just destroy their fruit, but the trees along with them, meaning they lost the ability to produce their fruit not just then, but in the future as well. The story even ends with the person claiming that they tried to warn them from their evil ways and presumably therefore leading them to better behavior in the future. It is worth noting that this person was not spared from the downfall the others experienced, however, and while he was declared the best amongst them, his protests certainly weren't enough to guide the others to virtue. Nor was it the case that he took it upon himself to gather his own fruit, with which he could have continued to plant more trees in the future, perhaps setting himself up as the leader and offering them a few seeds with which they might likewise support themselves. No, even the best amongst them was not good enough to escape the wrath of Allah, and would be placed in a position where he could only hope for better tidings in the future, and perhaps some sort of mercy in response to his piety, if Allah decided to be generous. None of this bodes very well for the Meccans, who I must remind my audience are still at this point Muhammad's neighbors, and the people he is and would continue for years to be actively trying to convert. Even the best of them would implicitly have to have their livelihoods taken away from them, and hope to be handed something better in the future if Allah's comparison holds true. Of course, the Meccans, or the people of Baka, since I should probably state at this point I do know that the city is supposed to be named in that way at this point in the timeline, are not mentioned by name. The only antecedent we can actually draw from the text is the deniers, meaning that this can and probably should be taken as having a double meaning. Yes, it refers to those who are mocking and attempting to discredit Muhammad at this time, but also it should be treated as a polemic and promise aimed at all deniers of Islam in the future. Such is the way the religion in question sets itself up, defensively, hostilely, always ready to denounce those who would deny its legitimacy. And that is the end of this passage. This has been Celeria Rosencreux, and I thank you very much for coming and watching throughout this video. Next time we shall continue from Ayat 29 onwards, and I hope you will join me again at that time. Farewell.